Hi dear traders, today the US will disclose its employment data, the main indicator of the US economic health. The report will show whether the Federal Reserve has room to raise the key interest rate to combat inflation. Next week, traders will have a chance to learn about the results of the Fed's aggressive policy. The US will publish their consumer inflation report for September, which is due only on Thursday. Until then, various countries are going to unveil a bulk of information. Let us take a look at these events in our video review. Recently, traders have been paying attention to the Australian dollar. The Reserve Bank of Australia decided to take into account the risk of global recession, which will inevitably affect the industrial production growth in China, which is the main consumer of Australia's raw materials. However, the regulator focused on the local economy and raised the benchmark rate by only 25 basis points instead of 50. On Tuesday, Australia will publish its consumer sentiment and business climate indicators, which will point at further actions of the central bank. Galloping inflation and the key interest rate hike have an extremely negative influence on business sentiment. Nevertheless, the indicator is still in the green, thus reflecting recovery and development. Such news may support the Australian dollar in the short term. Now investors are concerned not only about further actions of central banks, but also the influence of the UK new government on financial market sentiment. Liz Truss' regular comments about her intention to alter the tax system have posed the threat of political and financial crisis. The fact is that the yield of 10-year bonds surged to 5% amid panic, whereas the pound sterling approached parity against the US dollar. Under the current conditions, markets are too vulnerable to the macroeconomic data from the United Kingdom. The first part of the next week will be rich in such events. On Tuesday, the UK is going to report on its labour market. Notably, in August, the number of unemployed people increased for the first time since February 2021. The new data is likely to unveil another rise in the number of unemployment claims. On Wednesday, the UK will continue disclosing negative reports. According to the forecast, in August, the UK GDP declined by 0.1% on a monthly basis. Notably, the economic growth has slackened to almost zero. This fact is causing concerns and making UK assets less attractive for investors. A negative trend is clearly seen in the UK industrial production. According to estimates, in August, industrial production dropped by 1.5%. Against this backdrop, the pound's attractiveness may decline even more. Meanwhile, the US dollar is likely to gain in value. Data that is slated for release on Wednesday is expected to boost demand for the greenback. Thus, at the beginning of the US trade, markets will learn about changes in the US Producer Price Index in September. These figures will drop a hint about further trends in consumer inflation. Analysts suppose that producer prices will stagnate. That's why consumer prices may stabilize or show a slower growth pace. Later on Wednesday, the Fed will publish its recent meeting minutes. The document is likely to provide information about the aggressive and tough stance of the US monetary officials. Notably, at the recent meeting, the regulator raised the benchmark rate by another 75 basis points. Next week is going to be full of important macroeconomic events. We will follow the information and share the most relevant news with you. Stay tuned.